And a good Thursday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, and X. Don't forget the show is available 24/7 via podcast in your favorite podcast app. Just search for the Nick Craig Show or head on over to the website nickcraig.com and you can find the latest episodes there, available shortly after we're done here live each and every weekday morning at 7 a.m. Well, good Thursday morning to you. Fortunately, the winter weather that could have been a bigger threat for our area did not materialize. And looking outside this morning, roads seem to be good. I know some schools are operating under a couple of hours delay, or some schools are even closed this morning as of a precaution, but nevertheless, we did not deal with the brunt of it. There are some folks up to our north that are dealing with some power outages as of right now due to some more heavy icing. Before 5 o'clock this morning, it was about 8,000 or so people, and it continues, about 8,500 folks in the state without power this morning, most of them up as you head north of this area. Areas like Craven County, Tyrell, Jones, Duplin, those folks dealing with some scattered power outages due to ice that fell throughout the area. Well, we've got a packed show for you this morning. A lot of news going on rapidly, every day, every hour, seemingly. I go to bed and I wake up, there's a whole new set of news and topics and stories to cover. And we're going to begin this morning with something that is highly controversial. And it's the ongoing war in Ukraine between Russia, Vladimir Putin, and Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky. And we've got this war that has been brewing now for years, a war that has led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of fighters of both sides combined. And, it's got to end. I mean, that's what this comes down to. It's a complicated situation. There's no question about that. You've got a sovereign country in Ukraine that is dealing with a foreign adversary taking part of their land. A very complex geopolitical issue. Well, so let me just say that right up the front. However, with all of that said, there are serious concerns with the way in which Ukraine is operating. We learned last week, that nearly half of the money that U.S. taxpayers gave to Ukraine is unaccounted for. The Ukrainian president says he didn't get it. They don't have it. How is something like that possible? And this caused President Trump to go into a little bit of a diatribe yesterday on social media. It was predicated by the fact that Zelensky accused Trump of disinformation, essentially accusing him of being a puppet of Russia, which, of course, is a typical leftist tactic that you see whenever you disagree with somebody politically. You claim that they are in bed or getting their information from some sort of foreign source that is adversarial to you. It's a very weak political tactic, but that's what's being doled out now by the president of Ukraine. So I'm just going to go and we're just going to read Trump's post that he put on Truth Social yesterday and go about it. If you're watching live this morning, you can leave your comments on Rumble, YouTube, and X, and we'll jump into some of those. And so here's the post from Trump yesterday, 10:47 a.m. Think of it. A modestly successful comedian, Vladimir Zelensky, talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that couldn't be won, that never had to start, but a war that he, without the United States and Trump, will never be able to settle. Let me stop there. I think that part is accurate. This war is not going to be settled. There's not going to be a quote-unquote winner or loser. Russia is not going to completely take over Ukraine. Ukraine is not going to be able to completely secure their border. There's not going to be a quote-unquote winner or loser in regards to that. Trump is absolutely spot on by that. Russia thought they could wrap this thing up in the matter of weeks or months. It's been years now. They greatly mischaracterized the situation. The United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe, and Europe's money is guaranteed, while the United States will get nothing back. Why didn't Sleepy Joe Biden demand equalization? In that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to us. We have a big, beautiful ocean as a separation. On top of that, Zelensky admits that half of the money we sent him is, quote, missing. He refuses to have elections and is very low in Ukrainian polls, and the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle. A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. In the meantime, we are successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something all admit only Trump and the Trump administration could do. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably wants to keep the gravy train going. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered and millions have unnecessarily died, and so it continues. It's a very Trump-esque post yesterday on Truth Social. And of course, it's got some of the typical Trumpisms and some of his, the way in which he describes or discusses situations laid into it. But the overall message, I think, is pretty concise and pretty clear. This war is not going to just magically be settled by itself. If somebody was going to bring peace, it would have already happened. But it hasn't. And it's not going to. They have been at a stalemate now for years. Russia takes over a territory, then weeks or months later, Ukraine takes it back, then Russia takes it back, then Ukraine takes it back. It's a back and forth. Nobody's moving the ball substantially in any significant way. And in the meantime, the United States taxpayer has doled out, as Trump puts at the top of his post, $350 billion with a B dollars. $350 billion. I don't have a vested interest in Russia. I don't have a vested interest in Ukraine. I've got a vested interest in America. And to say I don't care what happens there is not an accurate assessment. I see that being kind of flung around on the internet in regards to people that kind of look at this situation and say enough is enough. Oh, well, you just don't care what happens. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying this war has been going on for years. There's not going to be a winner or loser. Russia's not going to be successful. Ukraine's not going to be successful. Some sort of peace deal is going to have to be made. Is everybody going to get what they want? No. It's called a negotiation. So everybody's going to have to give concessions. That's how compromise is made. Actual compromise. Not compromise with the Democrats. When you say compromising with the Democrats, they get 100% of what they want. You get nothing. This is going to be an actual compromise. So Trump is blasting Zelensky. Of course, the idea that he doesn't want to host an election is, of course, incredibly controversial. And we are at a point right now in America with our agenda being brought in by this president, an agenda that the American people voted in favor of overwhelmingly, both the popular vote and the Electoral College, was Make America Great Again. That was his slogan. Whether you like it or not, that was his message, and that's what the American people voted on. And so this is what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Today is the 20th of February. January 20th, or at noon, Trump was being sworn into the presidency. Was becoming the chief executive as the 47th president of the United States. And part of Make America Great Again is not isolationism. It's not closing our borders completely and shutting off the rest of the world and being a hermit. But it is realigning our priorities and getting back to the things that affect the American people. And in the grand scheme of things, and I know there's geopolitical aspects to it, resources, whether it's rare earth minerals or oil or gas, I understand there are geopolitical elements as well. I that is not lost on me. But when you look at this situation in Europe between Russia and Ukraine, there is very little vested interest by the United States itself in what's going on. From a pure, does it have an impact on the average day-to-day life of a U.S. citizen? The answer is no. Again, are there some of those geopolitical things? Yes. But we're not talking about situations in the past where you had direct influence on the American public as to what's going on. And I think, there's a lot of pushback on these comments from Trump. I saw an interesting post from Mark Levin, who, of course, like many of you, have an incredible amount of respect for. He was not happy at all with the comments that came out from President Trump yesterday. He put a post out on his X account late, essentially blasting Trump and didn't say Trump by name, but he's talking about essentially saying that Trump is trusting Putin over trusting Zelensky. I don't think this has got to do with trusting anybody, trusting one side or the other. I think that's not even part of the equation here. You have got a war that has been brewing for years with no end in sight. No end in sight. No winner, no loser, nothing. And so Trump says that the gravy train is over. Trump indicates that we, as the United States taxpayer, need to stop with this excessive amount of funding. I think that's a fair response. I don't think, of course, and I've seen Republicans saying, Trump is acting as if he's Putin's puppet. Putin's puppet how? We're not giving money to Russia. We're doling out billions of dollars to Ukraine with no end in sight, with no conclusion, with no timeline. And so if that's your stance, if you disagree with the president, which is, by the way, is fine. There's no issue with disagreeing with something that Trump says. But if you disagree with the president, my question is very simple. Okay, how much more money and how much more time? We kind of talked about this yesterday in regards to these, various DEI offices that exist. How much money do you need? And what are your goals? What are your outcomes? Give us a timeline as to this is how much we need. And with that money, we're going to get X, Y, and Z. Writing blank checks, which Congress has done now for years, both Republican and Democrats alike. Writing blank checks to Ukraine seemingly indefinitely is not a solution. That is not practical. That is not realistic for the United States of America. Europe, as Trump notes, is not kicking in their fair share. Europe is not dealing with this situation at all. Their money that they have allocated is currently frozen. Zelensky is panicking now and is demanding that money be released. He's of course being put on notice, and that's a big problem. So last night, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz from the state of Texas was on Laura Ingram's show and was talking about this and was responding to the Trump news from earlier in the day. And I just wanted to play a couple minutes of this because I thought it was a good exchange between Cruz and Laura Ingraham about this situation, which, as I've noted, is incredibly complicated. Let's take a listen to just a couple minutes of this from last night.
Cruz, Senator, thanks for joining us tonight. Why weren't we able to track the billions and billions of dollars that we sent to Ukraine, which ended up obviously being in a stalemate?
Well, look, because the Biden administration didn't want to. They didn't care about tracking it. They were just shoveling cash out the door. And the irony is, Joe Biden caused this war in the first place. If Donald Trump had been in the Oval Office, there would be no war in Ukraine. And I'll tell you what the precipitating cause of this war was, is Biden waived the sanctions on Nord Stream 2, the pipeline from Russia to Germany, that I authored into law. I wrote those sanctions into law. Putin was building that pipeline, and Putin stopped building that pipeline literally the day President Trump signed my sanctions legislation into law. That had prevented the war, and when Biden came in, he waived those sanctions, and that led directly to the war in Ukraine. Biden's weakness got Ukraine and got America into this mess.
Well, today, the panoply of voices, the usual forever war crowd, saying Trump's a poodle of Putin, Trump's echoing Kremlin talking points. And your response?
Well, listen, President Trump campaigned very clearly last year, and it was clear he was going to end this war. And he's going to end this war, I think, in the first half of this year. Now, I hope he ends it in a way that is a clear and obvious loss for Putin. I think that's good for America. But Trump has no interest in just pouring billions and billions of dollars into this war forever. And I got to say, whoever is advising Zelensky, he's getting terrible advice because he's turning around and running to the European press and attacking President Trump. And you and I both know the president very well. It is hard to find a strategy that is more likely to produce the opposite of what Zelensky wants and what he's doing right now, which is just insulting Trump.
And Donald Trump just.
I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop it right there because I think that kind of gets it. That kind of gets the full clip. I'll throw the link in the show notes over at Patreon for the Patreon subscribers. If you'd like to watch the full interview, it's definitely worth a watch. I think Ted Cruz did a phenomenal job summarizing and kind of doing this broad overview of the situation. Trump campaigned on an end to the war. That's a fact. And he has zero interest in his Make America Great Again agenda, as we talked about earlier. He has zero interest in continuing to funnel money to Ukraine, as I noted, almost indefinitely. So there's going to have to be an end. And I agree with Ted Cruz when he says some sort of peace agreement or some sort of deal that is an obvious loss for Russia. Sure. But there's something has got to be done. What is the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's what's going on now between Ukraine and Russia. Nobody is gaining any ground. Nobody is winning, quote unquote, in any substantial way. You have little things here and there that are happening, drone attacks that are successful on munitions depots and things like that. But nobody is, quote unquote, winning that war. There is no strategy. Ukraine is at the point right now where they are enlisting individuals that are 50 years plus old to go and fight because they've killed off everybody that's under the age of 25. And Russia's dealing with the same issue. They've killed off their youth in this war that nobody's winning. And in the meantime, you and I, the American taxpayer, are financing it to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars, which, apparently half of it is lost, unaccounted for. It just magically disappeared. Did it go directly into Zelensky's pocket? I have no freaking idea where it went. Was it skimmed off the top by somebody? I have no clue. But I do know this. There's a lot of uncertainty, but I can say this without a doubt this morning. This war is not going to end in a natural way with a winner, with one side winning. It's not. If it was that was going to happen, it would have happened 2 years ago, but it didn't, and it hasn't. There is no end in sight. The United States has already bankrolled this thing to an egregious amount of money with no results to show for it. It's time for that to end. President Trump is a strong leader. You don't have to necessarily agree with what he does all the time, but you can't say he's not a strong leader. He wants this war to end. He wants to cut the United States ties from it completely, and he will likely broker some sort of peace deal. And to just tack on to Ted Cruz's last point, Zelensky is acting like a complete and total jackass right now. Going to the European press, which is what he did, and complaining about Trump, complaining about America, who has financed them at the tune of over $350 billion, is an unbelievably stupid move. That is not something that is going to get him anything as in regards to what he wants. I think Trump is spot on a couple of things, and I look forward to seeing this come to an end. The United States does not have a vested interest. The taxpayers should not have been on the dole for this. Shame on Republicans and Democrats in Congress that continued to gaslight this war. As Laura Ingraham put it at the top, the forever war crowd in Washington, D.C., the military-industrial complex that loves war because they can all get their big kickbacks from the government. It's got to end. It's not sustainable, and the American people are fed up with it. Do the American people want Russia to win? No. They don't. But the American people also understand and also don't want this thing to go on forever because we're the ones paying for it. We're the ones financing it. We're the ones that are monetarily on the hook. So there's got to be an end. There's got to be some conclusion. Again, I'll throw the full link to this Ted Cruz, Laura Ingraham interview over on the show notes, which are available each and every weekday morning over at patreon.com/Nick Craig if you'd like to get access to those daily show notes, including our monthly hangout, which will be taking place next week. Make sure you're subscribed to Patreon for that. We jump on a Zoom call for a couple of hours, talk about the issues of the day, go back and forth, and then just kind of do an overview of what's going on. That'll be coming next week for Patreon subscribers. Patreon.com/Nick Craig. $5, $10 a month if you believe you're getting some value and enjoying the show. Appreciate everybody's financial support that's come on board in just a little over a month or so that we have been rocking and rolling. It is greatly appreciated. In some other news this morning, President Donald Trump is also making additional news as he is making some big changes in New York City. I don't think we talked about this on the podcast, but last month, New York City introduced something that they called congestion pricing, which was essentially an automatic toll that was required to be paid for individuals coming into Midtown Manhattan. And it was an excessive toll. For individuals that were heading into Manhattan's central business district from 60th Street all the way down to the southern tip of the financial district, had to pay a peak fee of $9, a $9 toll from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends. So 5 to 9 during the week, 9 to 9 on the weekends. $9 just to enter the Manhattan Central Business District. In a letter to New York Governor Kathy Hochul yesterday, U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said that the federal government has jurisdiction over highways leading into Manhattan and that these additional tolls pose an unfair burden on motorists outside the city. Trump celebrated the end of the congestion pricing, saying, quote, "Congestion pricing is dead. Manhattan and all over New York is saved. Long live the king," he wrote in a post on Truth Social. Hochul held a news conference shortly after the announcement from the Trump administration where she defiantly insisted that the cameras will help collect tolls and will remain in operational, and blasted the president for his comments on social media. Hochul said this yesterday, quote, "President Trump tweeted, 'Long live the king.' I'm here to say New York hasn't labored under a king in over 250 years, and we sure as hell aren't going to start now." Obviously, the joke there, the obvious comment from Trump in all caps, "Long live the king" at the end, obviously did not go over well with Kathy Hochul. So Sean Duffy said in a statement, New York's congestive pricing plan is a slap in the face to working class Americans and small business owners. Commuters using the highway system to enter New York City have already financed the construction and improvement of these highways through the payments of gas taxes and other taxes. And he's spot on about that. Right? We've already paid for these roads. This is not your traditional toll road that we're talking about, where you've got a private bridge or private road that is created that is tolled. We are talking about tolling an already existing intersection or a large set of Midtown Manhattan from 60th Street down to the financial district. And part of Sean Duffy's comments were there's no other way to enter this area. Typically, when you have a toll road, there are alternate routes. Right, if you drive from Wilmington out to Charlotte, you can take one of the expressways as you get further out west, and it bops you around all those small cities on towns on 74, and it's a toll road. You can pay to take it, and if you don't, you can still just drive 74 all the way through, and it's a little bit quicker, but there's other routes to travel. That's not the case with this congestion pricing. $9 a day. And New York already has unbelievably expensive tolls. But $9 a day to drive into Manhattan. Completely absurd. Now, there will be lawsuits on this. The governor in Kathy Hochul, who is incredibly unpopular, will, and the MTA, the Metro Transit Authority, they will, obviously, there will be some level of court battle over this. There will be some major issues, I'm sure, that the Democrats will try and bring forward. But as of right now, Trump says it's over. The transportation secretary says, get rid of the cameras. Kathy Hochul says, we're not going to do it. We're going to keep those cameras in there. We're going to keep the system operating. This is how Democrats want to fight. Okay. It's a ridiculous toll. It's a ridiculous system from the start. And she wants to continue it. I don't think long term, if what Sean Duffy was saying, then if what Sean Duffy was saying is not accurate or there's no merit to it, I doubt it would be brought forward. I can presume there's some sort of legal jurisdiction or legal rationale for how this was brought forward. And so now we'll wait and see. So that's one of the things that the Trump administration is working on. As of right now, we'll watch the back and forth between Governor Kathy Hochul, Sean Duffy, and the Trump administration on this congestive pricing in New York City, which, again, doesn't speed up anybody's commute, does not give you faster routes into Manhattan. It's simply just putting in ridiculous tax, which is what a toll is, a $9 tax for you to enter Midtown Manhattan. No justification, no reason, except for we need more money. And why could New York need more money? I mean, why would New York City and the state as a whole need more money? Well, a couple of reasons. The population is leaving. Taxes are too high. It's too expensive to live. So you've got mass exodus from states like New York. In many areas of the city, it is completely unsafe to live. And of course, on top of all of this, you've got New York City and New York State that have allocated large sums of money to fund programs for illegal immigrants. And now they need to continue to fund all of their programs for actual citizens and residents. And so how do we do that? They don't cut back on the money for illegal immigration to put illegal immigrants in hotel rooms and provide them with cell phones and food cards and vouchers and all of these fun things that you get when you come into the country illegally. They're not going to cut any of that back. They're going to add an additional tax to the residents of New York State and New York City. Those individuals traveling into Midtown Manhattan, they're going to tax you at $9 per day to come in. And that's how they'll make up the money. That's how they will offset their rising costs for illegal immigration. Unbelievably stupid. Unfortunately, unbelievably typical for a deep blue state like New York. So we'll keep an eye on this. It is not anywhere near done. We'll see what, I'm sure there will be some hefty legal challenges flying back and forth. We'll keep an eye on it right here on the Nick Craig Show. On the other side, we've got some additional news this morning, including over 6,000 IRS employees that could be laid off today. Trump is now floating the idea of giving some savings from DOGE immediately back to the American public, plus a very interesting video. Owen Schroyer, who works over at InfoWars, that's Alex Jones's outlet, spent about in a video, about a 20-minute video that was published a couple of days ago. On President's Day, he went to Austin, Texas, and embedded himself and was asking Democrats that were protesting Trump on President's Day some of the things that they stood for. I'm not going to show you the whole video, but I want to show you a couple pieces of it because it is remarkable as to how the left is operating right now. And of course, the things that they claim, like, the Trump and Republicans are fascist dictators, they claim these things. Yet they are the individuals that want to shout somebody down for having speech. They want to block somebody's camera. They don't want you to enter an area that is a public square. They're in front of the, City Hall in Austin or something like that. Very interesting video. I'll have a couple minutes of that coming up as well. As the Nick Craig Show rolls on this Thursday morning, streaming live on YouTube, Rumble, and X, and of course available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. And welcome back to the Nick Craig Show on a Thursday morning, streaming live to you on YouTube, Rumble, and X. Thanks for spending some time here this morning. Don't forget that you can subscribe to the show 24/7 via podcast wherever you get your shows. Just search for the Nick Craig Show and tap that subscribe or follow button. Well, the Internal Revenue Service, oh, how we love it. The New York The New York Times had this exclusive yesterday. The headline over there reads as follows: IRS to begin laying off roughly 6,000 employees on Thursday. This is an interesting piece. Let's go through the details. The Internal Revenue Service will begin laying off roughly 6,000 employees on Thursday as part of the Trump administration's push to downsize the federal workforce. 3 people familiar with the agency's plan told the New York Times. The terminations will target relatively recent hires at the IRS, which the Biden administration had attempted to revitalize with a surge of funding and new staff. The people said on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. The Trump administration has begun laying off probationary employees who do not enjoy as much job protection as their more tenured colleagues across the federal government over the last couple of weeks. IRS managers on Wednesday began asking employees to report to the office in the coming days and bring with them their government-issued equipment, according to messages viewed by the New York Times. The IRS employs roughly 100,000 accountants, lawyers, and other staff across the country. One email read as follows: under an executive order, IRS has been directed to terminate probationary employees who were not deemed critical to filing season. We don't have many details that we are permitted to share, but this is all tied to compliance with the executive order. Now, what that says is very interesting. Terminate probationary employees, so recent hires, one of these, new 80,000 IRS agents that Biden wanted to hire. But probationary employees who were not deemed critical to the filing season. Now, the IRS has one major job a year, and that's, of course, tax time. April, when the deadline is for you to file your personal federal taxes, right? Or your business taxes, whatever it is, when you file them with the Internal Revenue Service. So my question is probably an odd one, and there's no direct answer to it. But why were you hiring employees that were not needed for the filing season? Like, I could understand bolstering up around tax time. Almost every local tax office does just that. Come the beginning of the year, and as we get closer to April, they hire a bunch of temp workers to help in the filing of people's taxes. So you've got all of these new probational employees, but they're not critical to the filing season? Why the hell were they hired in the first place? What are these individuals doing if they're not critical to the IRS's sole objective every year, which is deal with people's taxes? Very interesting. And the New York Times goes on to say the layoffs come in the middle of tax filing season. Former IRS officials and Democrats have warned that losing such a large number of employees could still disrupt the ability of millions of Americans to easily file their taxes this year, even if the layoffs are not supposed to affect those deemed, quote, critical. Representatives for the IRS and the Treasury Department did not respond to a request for comment. Republicans have long pushed for cuts at the IRS, accusing the agency of taking politically motivated steps against conservatives, which has been proven and is true. Some lawmakers, including President Trump's nominee to run the agency, have called for abolishing the tax collector. Donald Trump chose Billy Long, a former Republican congressman, to lead the IRS, taking the unusual step of replacing the former commissioner. Donald Trump has already targeted the IRS for extending hiring freezes, and the Department of Homeland Security has asked for IRS agents to help them with immigration enforcement efforts. A member of Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has also sought broad access to the tax agency's sensitive taxpayer records. I thought they already had access to every record. I thought the Treasury system was the one with all the sensitive information. So, and they already have access to that. So what is the sensitive taxpayer records that exist here? I mean, just there. I mean, look at the article. Look at it for yourself. A member of Elon Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency has also sought broad access to the agency's sensitive taxpayer records. I thought that had already happened. And I thought that it was already a threat to democracy that was going on. This is great news to me. If you have non-critical employees working for the federal government, individuals that are not required to accomplish the task of dealing with people's taxes, they should not be there. Regardless of whether they're probationary or not, it's obviously easier to start with those probationary employees. But if they're not needed, if they're not critical to the job, why have them employed? Why are we paying for them? Right? It's pretty ironic because we're paying for them at the same agency in which we are sending in many cases, sending a large check to the federal government because of what we're filing with the IRS. There's a lot of irony there. So that's supposed to happen today. We don't have any, I don't have any additional details as of this morning. We just know that something is going to be taking place. These internal emails are telling people to get back to the office, bring their stuff with them. So that's likely to be a story throughout the day. We'll follow it, and as we get details, we'll have them coming up for you tomorrow morning on a Friday edition of the Nick Craig Show. All right. Earlier, throughout pretty much this whole week, we've kind of been keeping an eye and looking in on the left and see how they've been reacting to President Trump in his now month or so, little over a month in office, a little over 4 weeks that he's been in office. And it's been interesting to watch. We had the anti-Trump protests by this so-called nonpartisan group in Wilmington on Monday. We've heard from county employees speaking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The left is not in a good position right now. They are very much on their back heels. They have completely lost the war. They have lost the messaging on all of their main issues, men and women's sports, diversity, equity, and inclusion, all of this wacko trans stuff they bring forward. They have completely lost the battle on all of these issues and are losing the war right now. And so their solution seems to be doing what they did from 2016 to 2020, standing in front of city capitals, state capitals, Washington, D.C., and just yelling and screaming and chanting about Trump, about Elon Musk, about Republicans. And I saw this post. Somebody retweeted this yesterday. Alex Jones, the InfoWars network, has a reporter by the name of Owen Schroyer who went to, I guess maybe the state capitol in Texas, Austin, and was talking to some of these protesters on Monday, President's Day. And it's about a 25-minute video, which I'll throw in the show notes over at the Patreon page. We're not going to play through the entire thing, obviously, but I just wanted to play a couple minutes of it because he's going through and is being very nice. He's genuinely asking people questions. What are you doing here? Why are you here? What are these things that you're passionate about? Generally trying to get some information out of these people as to why they're spending their Monday afternoon holding signs and yelling about Trump in front of the Capitol in Texas. I just thought it was an interesting insight into the left and how things stand right now. So let's roll this video and take a listen to it.
Is this a gay pride event?
It's a humanity event.
A humanity event?
Yeah.
Who doesn't have rights?
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
I don't as a woman, as
You
a minority.
don't? What rights don't you have?
I don't have the right to kill a person that I'm growing inside my body.
That's true. You don't have the right to kill a
Okay,
person.
what
That's true.
rights don't you have?
I have the exact same rights you have.
No, you have more.
Well,
You know why you think you have more?
No, I don't think I have more. You think I have more.
Oh, no. You have more.
So explain that.
Explain history to you? Your founding fathers?
What year is it?
Exactly. It's 2025.
And we still haven't broken
And
those curses
we're not doing it anymore.
Curses? What curses? Am I cursed?
that the white men have put on us.
The white man put a curse on you?
White people
people of
don't
color.
exist. Your existence is based on genocide. That's why you're here trying to
Really?
find answers, because you have no culture. And so
No
you
culture,
rob
okay.
us of our culture.
Really? Like, can I get a mushroom to wear on my head?
Absolutely. You know where I got it from? One of your corporations.
I'm guessing, so that's white culture then.
No, mushrooms are fungus and they belong to the
Native
earth.
American.
But you said you got it from my corporation. I don't know what corporation you're talking about. Are you sure that's not a Mario head invented by a Japanese company?
It represents
what?
Luigi, who killed the CEO.
You know what?
Okay.
They also.
Oh, you like murderers.
I love it.
The Japanese.
She loves the guy that killed the who was it? The CEO of what was that? It was on Blue Cross, whatever healthcare company that was. So these people are protesting Trump and saying, "I love the fact that this guy was brutally murdered in broad daylight in New York City." Again, checking in on the left this morning, seeing what they're up to. Pretty crazy.
Much better culture than white people.
Yeah, that's funny because they don't take any immigrants. Did you know that? It's one of the most homogeneous cultures on earth. Did you know that?
Japanese empire is a thing to be studied.
All right. Wow. You are really you know what? I'll give you credit. At least you'll talk. I'm getting emotional?
Yeah.
So you can't answer the simple question, what rights do I have that you don't?
As a man in white America.
You don't have to worry about things we have to worry about.
So go ahead.
You can
How many times do I have to
stroll
ask?
around the park, doing whatever you want.
So can you.
No.
You're out here wearing a mushroom head.
And I can't wear a mushroom hat?
That's my point. You can stroll. No, the point is you can do anything I can do.
Right now over a mushroom hat.
You guys have a wonderful day. You want to be on TV?
Yeah.
What are you doing out here?
What are you doing here?
So for people listening, our audio listeners this morning, he's interviewing a group, and there's a mother and presumably daughter here. She's maybe like 12 years old or something like that. Her mother, of course, has roped her into to one of these wacko protests, and of course that's incredibly sad.
Test? Why? Read your shirt. Girls just want to have fundamental rights, and this administration is taking away my children's rights.
What rights are being taken away?
Access to basic health care for women.
Like what? What basic health care?
Abortion, obviously.
You think that's basic health care?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You think killing a baby is health care?
It's not killing a baby, honey. It's taking care of your body in the way that you choose to.
How many hearts does a human being have?
One.
One, right. So how many hearts does a woman have with a baby inside of her? Two.
One, because it's a fetus.
Two. You have a heartbeat? You have a heartbeat after 2 months. Heartbeat after 2 months. I've been to so many of these events, I've not met one of you that can hold a conversation. So what are you doing out here?
I'm coming to protest the illegal takeover of the U.S. government.
What was illegal?
Well, let's see. First off, we have him, Trump letting Elon Musk actually dissolve entire U.S. departments that were mandated
This guy's wearing
by
a wizard
Congress
hat.
and put into law.
What department has been dissolved?
Well, let's see. They're going into USAID. That got pulled out.
Yeah, so all the fraud and the waste?
None discovered.
None discovered. So shrimp on treadmills, gay performances, trans performances in South America, trans
Liar.
indoctrination.
Bye.
Liar.
You care so much about rapists coming over the border, but what about the one that's currently in the White House who's been convicted?
He has not been convicted of rape.
Really?
Yeah.
What about his admissions of grabbing?
So, I mean, this just goes on and on and on and on. It's a good video to watch because it brings you, and I really do enjoy doing this. Obviously, it's fun to poke fun at these freak shows that just can't make a substantive argument for anything that they stand for. So that part, of course, is funny. But the overarching reason I enjoy watching this stuff is because it really brings you into the mind of what these people think. And so they're marching around Austin, Texas, and they're claiming about this one guy, an illegal government takeover by the duly elected president of the United States. You've got individuals, of course, fundamental health care, fundamental human rights. You've got some woman with a mushroom hat claiming that she has no rights in America now that white people have all of these rights that she doesn't. The video just goes on, and you can see here you've got these very peaceful Democratic protesters who are blocking the camera, who are trying to shut down speech. This is the tolerant left. This is what these individuals stand for. They are complete and total hypocrites when they talk about tolerance. They claim the Democrats, they are the party of tolerance. Liberals and leftists, they are always talking about tolerance, tolerance, tolerance. Yet somebody shows up, and we just watched, what did we watch, like six minutes of this or so? And the host here, Owen Schroyer, is not being rude, is not yelling and screaming back at the individuals. He's actually asking them questions. Like, why are you here? What rights don't you have? You make these claims. Can you explain them? And of course, the answer is always the same. There's no way to explain it. You question these individuals, and then they claim, oh, you're just a liar. No, that's not true. There's a portion later in the video. The guy says, well, show me the Social Security spreadsheet that we talked about yesterday morning. People over 200-something years old. So Owen pulls that out on his phone and says, here it is. And the guy goes, oh, yeah, but that's not true information. He goes, but it's coming directly from like the Doge Twitter account. Like, these are the ones that have access. He goes, yeah, but that data is not true. That data is not accurate. You can't win with these people. They are unwilling to listen and unwilling to actually look at what's going on, which is something that happens on both sides of the political aisle, sure. This is apparently how the left is going to operate over the next 4 years. I think it's a really stupid approach on their behalf. You know, if you sat down a regular middle-of-the-road American person and had them watch this 24-minute video, their eyes would be glazing over because it's insane what these people are saying. It is absurd as to the things that they are claiming that are happening in this country. You've got people claiming that Twitter is a Nazi platform. Elon Musk is a Nazi. Trump is, I mean, it's all the same sorry, overused, tired Democrat talking points. With no substance, nobody's able to actually articulate and have a discussion about something. It's pretty sad and pathetic. But because the left doesn't really deal in fact, because the left spends most of their time coming up with and executing their political strategy based on emotion, the response here and what we saw in Wilmington on Monday, what happened here in this video, it's not overly surprising. Facts are not on their side for these very unpopular things that they stand for. So then it turns into emotion, or it turns into shut up and turn your camera off and I'm going to steal your microphone because you're having a discussion that I disagree with. All from the party of tolerance. All from the party of, remember, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What's the I stand for in DEI? Inclusion. So we should include everybody, right? We should allow individuals to have a different opinion. We should allow individuals to have a different viewpoint and be able to express those things. But no, not for the progressive left. They believe in inclusion as long as you fall hook, line, and sinker for their ridiculously crazy political ideology. The second you stray from that at all, your freedom of speech, your inclusion, it completely vanishes. It completely disappears. We've talked about this in regards to Elon Musk, a darling of the left, until he goes a little bit off message, starts questioning some of the Democrat narratives, and the next thing you know, he's an alt-right radical extremist. That's how the left operates. The second that you stop buying into all of their BS and all of their nonsense, they want you gone. And then they will demonize you. That is a very short-sighted political strategy that I think will have a detrimental impact to the Democrats long term. I truly believe that. It is not sustainable. Yeah, they get their short-term wins, but we've seen the Overton window shift in America over the last couple of years. We've seen America course correct. And I've used this analogy for years, and it's one of my favorite. You take a rubber band and you put it between two hands, two of your thumbs, and you pull it. Hold one hand in a solid place and pull the other one. Eventually, what's going to happen is the rubber band is going to break. You pull it very far to the left, and what happens? The rubber band breaks, and it slingshots back in the other direction. That's, I believe, what's happening politically. The Democrats have attempted to move the message, have attempted to move the narrative so far to the left that the rubber band is on the precipice if it hasn't already broken. And the result of that is going to be a rapid acceleration to the side of the Republicans. Because the American people watch and listen and hear what's going on, and they're astounded by it. They're not in favor of these things. Again, I'll use the men and women's sports as a great example. This was a champion issue for the Democrats. They thought they would win some great favor by saying, we're going to support the trans community, which is a very small subset of people. And to support that community, we are going to take over and destroy female athletics. We are going to destroy things like Title IX, which was created to give women a fair and equal place to participate in sports. So to placate to a very small radical group of individuals within the Democrat Party, the trans community, Democrats completely destroyed female sports. They wanted to destroy them, all to placate to this very small group, which is an issue that the vast majority of the American people are not in favor of. I called them 80-20 issues. 80+% of the American population is not okay with allowing biological men that are pretending to be women because it's a Thursday to participate in sports that are designated for women, for females, for young girls in high school and college. That's the way in which the Democrats have operated. And again, they continue to lose the messaging. They continue to lose the battle on all of these issues because they're not popular. So that course correction is going on right now. And if the left continues to operate in this manner, which all indication 4 weeks in they're going to, it's only going to push more and more people. And I say to the right, but it's really not. It's just pushing them out of the left. It's taking people that are middle of the road and making them lean a little bit red, a little bit right, a little bit Republican, a little bit conservative. Not because the Republicans are doing this anything amazing to welcome these individuals in. It's simply because the left is so freaking far out, and they're so out to lunch on so many of these issues that people go, this stuff is insane. You want to give puberty blockers to a 6-year-old because you believe they should be transgender? That's insane. And that's what's pushing people, I say, to the right in regards to these issues. So again, I'll throw the links to the full video up on our Patreon, patreon.com/Nick Craig, where you can support the show and get bonus access to things like our daily show notes. There's also a link to that over on the website, nickcraig.com. All right, one final thing before we get out of here this morning. Actually, two final things. First off, Trump is floating the idea of giving 20% of the money that Elon Musk and his team at the Department of Government Efficiency have saved back to the American people. While speaking at the Florida Institute Policy Summit in Miami, Florida, Trump highlighted how his administration has, quote, accomplished more in 4 weeks than most administrations accomplish in 4 years. Trump also said, quote, there's even under consideration a new concept where we're going to give 20% of the Doge savings to the American citizens and 20% going to pay down the debt because the numbers are incredible. So many billions and billions, hundreds of billions that we're thinking about giving 20% back to the American citizens and 20% to pay back the debt, pay down the debt. This would be an incredibly popular thing for the Trump administration to do. Is it the smartest thing economically and financially to do? Probably not. But you talk about scoring some major political points. Start giving people a rebate on the taxes that they pay that the federal government pissed away through all of these wacko programs. That's a very popular thing for the Trump administration to move forward with. Now, Trump says and speaks a lot of times off the cuff. Does this actually come to fruition? Who knows? But it is an interesting concept and something that would probably pull very well in regards to the American public. And finally, this morning, some local news. Up in Pender County this morning, commissioners have voted against an ICE resolution after their sheriff exposed concerns. Commissioners earlier this week struck down a resolution to participate in a federal program which deputizes local officers to enforce federal immigration law amid concerns about increased costs on local government. This came as the county's sheriff and area residents spoke against the move. A resolution of support before the Pender County Board of Commissioners Tuesday night called for the local sheriff's office to enter a federal 287G program created as part of the 1996 Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act. The goal was to allow designated states and local law enforcement agencies to execute certain functions of federal immigration law, including issuing charging documents to initiate the deportation process, interviewing individuals on their citizenship status, and transfer of non-citizens into ICE custody. The resolution read as follows, quote, "The Pender Board of Commissioners supports the Pender County Sheriff's Office in entering into this memorandum of agreement with ICE." A motion to kill, which essentially to stop this motion, passed 3-1. Commissioner Brent Springer was absent, but Brad George, Ken Smith, and Jerry Groves voted in favor, while the chair, Randy Burton, who initiated the county proposal to enter into the agreement, voted against it. Commissioner Randy Burton contended that the program would increase public safety by ensuring the incarceration of violent offenders. He also added that the sheriff could negotiate the agreement to avoid burdening the county with more costs. President Donald Trump signed a 2017 executive order directing the federal government to pursue more of those agreements. He issued a similar order last month, as well as directing a directive allowing ICE to carry out some of those raids as well. Now, the Pender County Sheriff in Alan Cutler said he agreed with some elements of what went on. However, he did not agree with ICE raids in the county schools, saying, quote, "There's no need for a big disruptive raid to go on at schools. We can enforce the law, serve warrants, but do it in a legal manner and do it in a safe manner." Sheriff Alan Cutler told the board county law enforcement was already coordinating closely with ICE and expressed concerns committing to the program would be a financial burden. He said, quote, "When you get into housing federal inmates, we're not equipped with that right now, and there may be the need for additional personnel." Cutler said the sheriff's office already has a capacity to access federal immigration databases and to identify incarcerated individuals' citizenship statuses and is frequently sharing that information with ICE. Cutler also pledged not to conduct raids in schools or churches as well and received applause from the audience, 10 of whom spoke at the meeting. The sheriff thanked the residents and the commissioners for their interest in the issue. He said at the end, "I appreciate the support and I do believe it was in good intent. But at this point and at this time, I would not be signing this memorandum of agreement with ICE." So with that, you had many residents speaking against it. The sheriff, who is a Republican, the Board of Commissioners, which is a Republican, could not come to agreement on this. I will admit I'm not super well versed on exactly what it means for a local agency to do one of these 287G agreements. There does appear to be some additional financial burdens that those counties, aka the taxpayers, would have to bear. I think if you've got a sheriff's department, this is just spitballing, but I think if you've got a sheriff's department that is already working closely with ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and already has a good relationship with them, I'm not necessarily sure that this agreement adds much more to the equation. Then, of course, if you're signing an agreement with the federal government, you then have to follow everything that comes associated with that, including some of those financial costs. That seemed to be the big holdup during the commission meeting. So with that resolution, it did not pass. Commissioner Brad George, who voted against it, said, quote, "I've done a lot of research and I've received numerous emails, 50 or 60 of them, which I appreciate the community having input. Looking at this, I'm really cautious about our county entering something that was developed in 1996. You only have 135 law enforcement agencies across the country in it currently, and it was originally at a high, only had 280 entities across the country that were enrolled in the program. So some issues there with the program, apparently, that caused many law enforcement agencies not to agree. Again, if a sheriff's office is going to work with ICE, which, by the way, they are now legally required to in North Carolina. You had House Bill 10, which passed the General Assembly last year, which did require every sheriff, all 100 counties, to cooperate with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, to agree with ICE and work with ICE on their detainer requests. That is required now in every state, and sheriffs are legally bound and responsible to follow alongside those ICE detainers. The immigration issue is not going to be something that's going anywhere anytime soon. Continues to be a very hot button political issue, and it's going to continue. There's no question about it. It's a major campaign issue for the president. It was a major issue for voters, according to all sorts of political polling, as they headed their way into various voting booths and voting locations in the November election. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. So we'll see, again, how some of these things continue to shake out. And that's going to do it for a Thursday edition of the Nick Craig Show. Thanks for joining us live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, and X. And, of course, to all of our great podcast listeners. We are back with you tomorrow morning, Friday morning. Don't forget to check out the podcast 24/7 wherever you get your shows.